All right. Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Unnamed Bracketology podcast. My name is Kerry Miller, joined as always by my good friend Graham Dorn. And we have a guest on with us again today. I think this is the third, maybe fourth, I've lost track, third guest of the season, we'll say. Tony Natoci, who does bracketology for UMHoops. Tony, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Tell us how long you've been doing bracketology and what made you get into this nerdiest of the sciences.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, first of all, yeah, Kerry, Graham, thank you for having me on. Been big fans of both of your work, the mock selection committee, all of your writing and your bracketology for years. So this is definitely a bit of a dream for me. A little starstruck, but I'll do my best to keep it contained. Yeah, probably if I were a better basketball player, I'd maybe do a little bit less bracketology. But I hit the limit of my talent years and years ago. But yeah, I grew up in Michigan as a Michigan fan. Kind of in the 2000s is really where I really took off. My formative fandom years. We had a lot of agonizing selection Sundays, not quite getting over the hump. And then I discovered the bracket matrix in 2009. We finally made the tournament. I was like, oh man, this is great. And then a few years later, I was like, you know what, maybe I can give this a try. So I've been doing bracketology, publishing a bracket on a little blog site since 2018. So yeah, it's been a good ride. I've been writing kind of somewhat weekly columns for umhoops.com, focusing on Michigan and the Big Ten since 2020. So really figured I would just dive right into the hobby.
Sounds great. And as a Michigan guy, we had to have you on for Big Ten Tuesday. Tony reached out to me last March when I was feeling super forlorn about the state of bracketology. He was like, you know, I hope you're okay, man. You sound like you're about to drive off a cliff, basically. It's like, but you're a good guy, and I think you should leave. So I had to break out the Dan Flash's shirt. Let's throw up the spreadsheet here. Ba-ba-ba-ba. There we go. We'll get that going. All right. So Big Ten today, and we probably won't talk much on these top five. As I was emailing Tony earlier, it's kind of a weird time of the season where these teams are just boring to talk about. Like we know they're going to get in. There's really no point in worrying too much. Like Nebraska, right? Six, seven, eight. Who really cares? They're a two seed. They're going to be solidly in. I do think Michigan State versus Purdue is getting interesting. And I was thinking that before I saw both of your seed lists, where you both have Purdue ahead of Michigan State. I thought maybe I was a little bit low on Purdue, and certainly the metrics would say that I'm low on Purdue. Graham, do you want to jump in and give us something on Purdue and Michigan State? Because now you have them side by side after Kansas jumped over them last night.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's actually kind of the first thing. I think there are some warning signs with both Purdue and Michigan State's resume. The fact a 5-loss team jumped in front of both of them, I think gives you an indication that maybe not as all's quite as well as it looks. Michigan State in particular, you mentioned I have them ahead of Purdue. There's a big reason for that. 0 wins over a top 4 seed for Michigan State and 0 true road wins over any team in the tournament. Washington is their best road win. I am getting a little concerned by Michigan State's resume. Right now, 3 losses, all the good teams, but 2 of them are at home. That's a little concerning. I think if you look at Michigan State's resume, it's one that screams should be a top seed right now, but maybe in the near future could be falling faster than we think.
Tony, you also have Purdue ahead of Michigan State. Convince me on that one. I might switch it right now.
Yeah, I've been going back and forth. I think looking at the metrics, I was surprised when I saw Purdue on my, very the top of the 3 seed line at 9 overall, but I was just kind of looking around. I couldn't drop them any lower than that. I think one thing that jumps out to me with Purdue, 5 wins against teams currently in my seed list and in my bracket away from home, I think is super impressive. I think we saw this a little bit last year with Purdue, where kind of towards the end of the year, maybe it looked a little shaky. They kind of had a bit of a losing streak in January, February, but the metrics were great. The committee rewarded them for that. MSU, I think, just slightly worse across the board, and so I had Purdue just a little ahead of me.
Yeah, I think my reluctance to drop Michigan State is just their 3 losses were to Duke, Michigan, and Nebraska. Like I have a hard time putting them below Purdue, but as you mentioned, like we've seen this before from Purdue. They seem to have a Fletcher Lawyer goes ice cold for 2 weeks, and then they just drop a couple of games, and then they're back. And who knows if they'll lose to Fairleigh Dickinson or make it all the way to the national championship game. But either way, they're safely in somewhere in that 3-4 seed line. Let's move down to the more intriguing part of the Big Ten. This whole bubble where we're all relatively close, certainly on those top three or top four teams. Iowa near the bottom of the 8 line, Wisconsin somewhere on the 9 line, USC somewhere on the 10 line, and Graham and I talked about our slight divide on Indiana on Sunday, but I think I'm just a little bit reluctant to almost over reward them for a good week when they weren't even in the conversation before that. But there's certainly a case for them to be right there at 36 or 39. Anything on any of those 4 teams? Graham, I'll let you jump in first, and then we'll go to Tony. But anything on those 4 in particular you want to touch on?
Well, I think USC could potentially be falling further. It's an interesting week. The schedule is shaping up really interestingly for a lot of Big Ten bubble games to be coming up, and I think Indiana, they're looking to me like a team that's probably going to make the field, and they might do some real damage on other teams' resumes on the way out, including that USC team. They could also get Wisconsin, send that into a worse situation. So I could easily see Indiana not just making the field and getting a better seed, but hurting the Big Ten's number of bids in the process, because a lot of these bubble teams really can't afford a loss to another bubble team right now. And Indiana is in perfect position to hand some difficult losses to teams that really can't afford to take them.
Tony, you got anything on Wisconsin, USC, Iowa, or Indiana you want to hit on?
I mean, I think later tonight, Indiana stays out on the West Coast to play USC. I mean, that's a massive game. They're kind of right next to each other on my seed list, very close together on both of yours as well. Yeah, we'll see. I think, Indiana, great week, kind of surging a little bit. They finally got those signature wins, those quad 1 wins that they needed to have to kind of back up this fairly impressive net ranking that they've got here. I think USC, tons of injury problems. Rodney Rice out for the season. So they've kind of tried to figure it out on the fly. Elijah Arenas, highly touted top 10 prospect, just kind of made his debut, I think, a week or 2 ago. Plugged him in the starting lineup, finally starting to make some shots, finding his footing a little bit. I think USC just kind of needs to throw bodies at this problem and see if they can make something stick. So we'll see. I mean, I think both of these teams could be super dangerous. They could start to fade. We'll have to see, but kind of a massive pivot moment for both of them tonight.
Yeah, it was pretty wild that they got Arenas back and then lost at home to Northwestern. It was kind of the opposite of Stanford losing Chisholm Akpara and then beating North Carolina and then falling apart after that. So I think maybe they just needed that little early loss, and they've started to turn things around. Maybe. I mean, they almost won at Iowa the other night. That would have been a really convincing win for them, or a seed clinching win for them, kind of. Yeah, I was going to point out the injury thing, as you mentioned in your very detailed email you sent me. You did more prep for this than we ever have. The next 2 teams in the Big Ten here, though, I think are very interesting right there on the bubble, UCLA and Ohio State. And I put in here on both of them that they also have these other games left, because it's more than just 3 big games. They each have 5 huge games remaining, which is, right, if you're, last 4 in, first 4 out, you want those opportunities. But how many of them do you want when you already have 7 losses? I think both of them, opportunity is absolutely before them, but they haven't really, outside of UCLA's win over Purdue, haven't really proved anything against the field. Tony, you have Ohio State in. We both have them a little bit out. I'll let you go to bat for the Buckeyes real quick before their schedule possibly does them in.
Yeah, it's interesting with these bubble teams. I feel like some years you just kind of get a team that has enough opportunities at the right time, but not too many, so they don't drop too many games. Maybe they get a little bit lucky with travel, with timing, with player availability. You kind of have to thread the needle a little bit. I think, Ohio State certainly has chances. That Virginia neutral court matchup, which I love, by the way. I hope that teams do more of this, ideally on home courts, not on neutral venues. But these mid-league non-conference matchups are always interesting. But Ohio State, I mean, no high-end wins. They have I think one quad 1 win at Northwestern, which sort of I guess barely qualifies.
Yeah.
But their efficiency is high. I think I'm at this point. I'm just kind of going at what has the committee shown us over the last couple of years? These high major teams that are talented, that show these flashes of really competing against the best of the best, but don't quite have enough wins. I'm keeping them in for now. Their resume and kind of their team sheet overall, I think it reminds me a lot of Miami, the Florida Miami, not the Ohio one. And I've got Miami in, so I kind of think, okay, well, I'll leave Ohio State in for now. I think it'll start to sort itself out. It was very close for me, but yeah, I've got him part of my Dayton last four in.
Yeah, you had mentioned to me that Miami and Ohio State combination, and I like it. And as I said to you, I like it because it makes me feel better about pushing Miami out of my field real soon. I don't know that it
Yeah.
helps me get Ohio State in so much as it makes me further question the Hurricanes, but certainly Ohio State has more opportunities than Miami, but Miami only has the 5 losses. It's going to be weird. Like Ohio State could end up with 11 losses and still have, even having not really beaten anybody yet, they'll have more quality wins than Miami, Florida, because they don't play Duke at all. They don't play at North Carolina. They don't play at Louisville. I think they still have a home game against Virginia. I guess I could quickly go look on the ACC tab. Graham, do you want to say anything on UCLA or Ohio State?
Not necessarily UCLA or Ohio State, but I do think Washington is slowly creeping a little bit
Yeah.
closer. They haven't really done anything that jumps off the page, but I kind of feel like they're just as much of a competitor as a team like Ohio State is at this point. Like the opportunities are there. I'd almost argue that there's a little bit easier schedule for quality wins for Washington, especially to maybe knock some competitors out in the process. So I don't think the Huskies are done at all. I think, having them on that left side of the sheet and, NA doesn't mean they're out of this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tony, I think you said you have them like 13th out, right?
Yeah, my 13th team out, which might seem fairly far down the list, but they have right now. I think if you check on Ken Palm or Torvik, to this point they've played the toughest Big Ten schedule of any Big Ten team. It's just a super front loaded slate for them, and so they were able to kind of scrap and claw their way through it. Took some bruises obviously with the 10 losses. But that sets up the back half of the schedule, which is much more doable. They could make up some ground fairly quickly. Iowa at home tomorrow is a massive spot for them, and then they fly down the coast to play UCLA, so they stay in the time zone. I think, Washington. I feel like they're like a game away from being a game away, but they're absolutely still in it. And if they put together a run, they could jump some of these teams above them on the list.
It's very John Rothstein of you, in position to be in position. But yeah, I agree. I said, I don't know if it was a week ago when we were talking Big Ten or if it was on Sunday. It was like, if they don't beat Illinois, I think we can get rid of them. And then they lost that game. I was like, nope, I was wrong. They're still right there. They remind me of Xavier, and I said this on Twitter the other day from last year, where it was like by early February they were like, I think they might have been 12-10 exactly. And I was just like, why can't I get rid of this team? And then they got hot against, similar thing where they had kind of a favorable back end of the schedule. I do think if they don't beat Iowa tomorrow, it probably is the end just because they don't have the opportunities to get those quality wins. But at USC, they got that win. Maybe that ends up being a tiebreaker when all is said and done. Who knows? Um, I think that's all I've got. Nobody on the right, even though Northwestern is 70 in the net, they have no path whatsoever. So I think all those 6 teams on the right are good as dead. But they could be a fun little, whether they end up being quad 1 or quad 2 as a road game, and then quad 2 or quad 3 as a home game, that could end up playing a factor in some regard. Although, as I tweeted yesterday or 2 days ago in regards to Florida and North Carolina State, you can't always just look at the quad-based records. You got to actually dig into the data. And I don't think anybody is looking at a win over Northwestern and saying, "Wow, that's awesome." And that's kind of why we're why we're a bit questionable about Ohio State getting in. Anything else Big Ten in general you guys want to hit on?
I just think it's a good year for the Big Ten as far as the bubble goes. And what I mean by that is I'm looking at the Big 12. I'm not really seeing bids coming out of there. I'm not seeing them come out of the Big East. I think the ACC is about to whittle their bubble teams down. It just seems like you've got a bunch of teams here like Wisconsin, USC, Indiana. You see, like I could see a fair amount of those teams being in. Like we might be surprised. Maybe there's multiple teams from the Big Ten headed to Dayton. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Like if we ended up with 3 out of 4, I wouldn't even be shocked. Like I could see 3 of the 4 teams in Dayton being in the Big Ten. That's the sort of year it is. Good year for a lot of bids for the Big Ten.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not sure. Has the conference ever had 3 in the first 4? I don't know if that's happened. It would be interesting. It'd be a good draw. I'm sure. Yeah, a lot of teams would fan bases would drive into Dayton and kind of take over that city over those 2 nights. But yeah, it's kind of a strange year in that you've got this kind of cluster at the top, kind of the Big 5. Then you have a fairly large gap, and then you get to Iowa, kind of towards the bottom rung of the 8 seed line. Kind of a lot of teams in here. We'll see. The teams at the top, not just in the Big 10, but across the country, just haven't been losing to anyone else besides the other teams at the very top. And so we'll see. Obviously, Wisconsin's got the huge win at Michigan. A couple of these teams also have wins over Purdue, and so it's happened, and it'll have to continue to happen for these teams to kind of try to surge up or stay on the right side of the cut line. Yeah, we'll see. Also, the teams on the right. I do appreciate the Big Ten. Last year, I think only 15 out of the 18 teams made the tournament. They fixed that this year. Every team, all 18, are going to go to Chicago. I think the bottom 4 start on Tuesday, so they would have to win 6 in a row, which is kind of insane, but. We'll see what happens. But I do think Northwestern staying in the top 75 is important for some other teams' resumes. So teams will play spoiler. We'll see how it shakes out. But
yeah, I will say just to follow up on the Dayton thing really quick. If not for a bunch of literally unprecedented bid stealers 2 years ago, we very well may have seen the Big East since Seton Hall, St. John's, and Providence all to Dayton. Yep. That probably was going to happen if not for a bunch of bid stealers.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I thought we were talking about the Big East maybe doing it, and then none of them got in. But to the bottom 4 thing, which league is it that Rocco's the stairway to 7 or whatever? Where if you're the bottom, is it the Southland?
Oh gosh, that's
right. I can't remember which one it is.
I think WCC might have done something like that. Yeah.
I'm going to Google it real quick. Stairway to 7. Of course, it wants Stairway to Heaven. Oh, it's giving me Pittsburgh Steelers. Oh, I'm done. I'm not looking any further. I can't do that. All right. That'll wrap us up for today. Rocco, if you're listening, tell us which league has the Stairway to 7. Until next time, take care and enjoy the hoops. Tony, thanks for joining us. We'll get you back in for a different conference that you're not so comfortable with, man.
Yes, anytime. You got it. I'll push the envelope. Yeah, we'll. I'll be ready. Just give me a call, give me a shout. Happy to talk hoops with you. Thanks again for having me on, and have a great rest of your day or evening.
All right, thank you, sir, and take care until next time.